Hi everybody, I'm Lubaszka. I'm from Gensler. Thanks so much for staying for my session. So this is called That's Cool, Now What? Democratizing Augmented Reality and Virtual Reality Use within the world's largest architecture firm. So if you're not familiar with Gensler, we are the largest architecture firm in the world, and we're also the most profitable. We have about 4,000 active clients, and I'm based out of the Los Angeles office, which is now up to 615 people. We've been around for over 50 years, and we're located all over the world, and we work on 29 different areas of practice. So we'll do anything from the tallest building in China, the Shanghai Tower, to designing the label for a bottle of wine. And 300 of the Fortune 500 are our clients. So the reason I'm telling you all of that is because when you're dealing with a group of people that have found a lot of success doing things one way, it's an interesting challenge to try to show them why they should adopt something new. And this might be something that's happening in your own organizations as you're incorporating the new hardware and software that are on display at this event today. So one quotation that we try to keep in mind is one from Mark Andreessen about how software is eating the world and how every company is now a software company. So while Gensler might be an architecture company today, what we basically do is we create 3D visual assets that then are taken by contractors and built into actual spaces. But what we're really interested in is how that's going to change with new augmented and virtual technologies and what that's going to mean for people in their everyday life. So our clients expect us to be experts in change and to know what's coming 3 to 5 years from now when the buildings we're designing will actually be built. And so in that context, we don't think of our peers as other architects and designers, but we think of them as the companies that are creating these new devices. So this is a graphic with the logos of everyone who participated at AWE last year, which is the biggest event of its kind. A lot of household names up there. Some of these are clients of ours. But we were the only architecture firm that went. And it's because we don't approach the technologies as architects and designers. We approach them as developers, collaborators, contributors. We try to be part of every early SDK release, early pilot, and we have also started authoring our own software. And a big part of this is because every architect is now dealing with the 4 realities. So VR, AR, mixed reality, and diminished reality. And one reason why this is really relevant for our clients is because people remember 20% of what they read, 40% of what they observe, but 90% of what they experience. So if we can give them a visceral presentation of the built space ahead of time, it allows us the opportunity to eliminate surprises later and get buy-in for design impact. So to give you a little context about our industry, billings at architecture firms peaked at $28.5 billion a few years ago. And they're saying that virtual reality will be a $30 billion industry very soon, and that AR will be a $90 billion industry. So for us to ignore numbers like these, it's as if we'd be part of the Washington Post and someone just said, have you heard about this new thing called the blog? And we just say, oh, that's funny. You know, let's see where that goes. So we're trying not to ignore VR and AR, but instead make it something that's part of our daily workflow. We're all familiar with the Gartner hype cycle, I'm sure. And so right now, I think we're in the slope of enlightenment area. But we did have to get through a lot of different expectations about what would be possible with this technology. And so now we like to say we know VR. We have our own VR app. We allow room-scale VR experiences for our clients. We do 360 renderings. We integrate it with all of our different software platforms with one click. But none of it happened overnight. So there's this bell curve that describes the innovation adoption life cycle, which you've probably all seen. And we felt like we were kind of in the innovator early adopter phase. The first VR headset we had at Gensler was when Oculus was still a startup before they were acquired by Facebook. They gave us Tony Hawk's old goggles and said, hey, you're designing our space. Can you show us what it's going to look like in VR? And that was kind of how our journey started with it. And to realize that we needed this to be happening with all of our employees and not just having a few special software gurus, we looked into change management and how we could convince employees to use these tools. So one way that people will alter their mindset is if they understand the point of the change, right? if there's a reward and recognition system for them incorporating the new technology, if they have the skills to do what it requires. Architecture is a highly complex task, so I always tell people if you can charge your phone, you can plug in a VR headset. If you can print something, you can create a VR experience. We've implemented all these one-click solutions, technologies like Enscape or Fuser that are plugins for our existing CAD software platforms like Revit, Rhino, and SketchUp. So now anyone can make it. And then the other thing you need to do is you need to show people modeling this change actively, people that other employees respect. And so that was when we realized that we couldn't just buy all of this equipment and let it sit there on the shelf and hope it would get implemented in our projects. We had to actively socialize it. So that was kind of how the VR Jam started. And what is that? Well, it's kind of like you're taking a site walk, or like you're at a cocktail party, or maybe a rock band jam session, or a bohemian salon. Sometimes we have guests. Definitely like a design review, because everyone has an opinion about what they're looking at. Also like virtual reality boot camp. If you've never tried VR before, we say, come to the VR Jam this week and you'll get a sense of what's happening. It's also like software usability testing, because the software we use in the VR Jam, we have representatives from the company there joining in. It's also kind of like a sandbox. It's very low stakes. It's not formal, it's casual. And then it's also kind of like a time machine. So essentially, we are all gathering together and visiting a place that may or may not exist one day that was designed by Gensler folks. Everything from office buildings to airports to giant theme parks, sports stadiums, movie theaters, campuses. So I'll show you a little video about what that's like now. Well, it's okay if we don't have sound. I can talk over it. So we send out an invite as if you're attending like a rock concert. Like there'd be a cool poster design for what would be happening that week. And then we would have a design team choose their project and take everyone on a walk through a design. We're using a collaborative tool called Fuser in these instances, where everyone's represented by a different avatar. And we give everyone a GoToMeeting call-in, so even if you don't have a VR headset in your office, you could still join in and see the site walk. And then we'll also streamcast like over webcam the people as they're in VR, so you'll see their avatar walking around, you'll see how people are reacting in virtual reality, and all together, you know, we'll get tons of participation, and it's a really fun way to see different projects from around the firm in an immersive way. And it's also a way for people to practice so that their first demo isn't with the client. A lot of clients might feel uncomfortable with the hygiene, or they feel vulnerable putting a headset on, so it's one way to kind of hone your skills about this being a service experience for clients. Okay, so I'll stop it, because now it's mostly just us saying wow over and over again. Okay. So we've done 73 of those so far. We've visited over 80 projects, and we've had 35 offices join in and over 500 people. The other thing that we implemented was a newsletter called Reality Check, and this went out every week, and it came out of a conversation I had with my boss early on, where I thought it went really well, and at the end of it he said, I didn't understand anything you were talking about. It was all jargon, it was all these technologies I've never heard of. How can you make this simpler? So we wanted to kind of demystify the jargon, cut through the hype, and celebrate the internal champions that were using these new technologies and kind of raise the ambient level of awareness about what everything was. So every week we would feature some kind of project where VR was used by the team, or AR. We'd have action shots of people at the VR jams. We'd invite them to the next VR jam. We have a Gensler VR app specifically, so we would Photoshop a famous architect wearing a VR headset saying, you know, if they had VR, they'd be using it too, why aren't you now? We'd do a tip, trick, or tutorial, cover some sort of tool, have pictures of our events in the community, and then news stories where either we were quoted by the media about our use or interesting information for people that wanted to get involved with this technology. So in that first year, we did about 44 events where we either brought virtual reality or we spoke about it. And then we also did things like we would have digital design parties at the office. This is in our Dallas office. And they set up a green screen where people could pose to be entourage for our VR and AR experiences. It had everything from our headsets to drones or other things that we're working on with digital information. And then we'd bring our walkthroughs to things like groundbreakings or to employee tours to show them their new spaces. And anyone can download our app if they want to. They'll be able to see where I work, the Los Angeles office, in the demo in the gallery. But it's also a secure way for us to deliver the content to clients. And our goal is really about making sure everyone's comfortable using it so that, you know, if I'm out of town, someone isn't like, oh, I need to do a VR presentation, who can help me? Everyone should feel like they can do it. And that's been our main, okay. I have another video I can show. 1 second. So that was kind of the main drive with virtual reality. For augmented reality, we developed this little deck of playing cards. And there's a different building on each card. So 52, so it's kind of like a portfolio in your pocket. And then when you show it to the camera, it recognizes the image and it shows you the building in augmented reality. So when you lay them out on a table, you can create kind of like a skyline with the Gensler buildings. And part of this was, I think we did this in 2015. And it was when everyone was still saying, oh, what's the difference between AR and VR? Or they didn't really understand a use case. And this was just kind of a proof of concept to get people excited about it.